Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is said to have over 8 new characters that will be introduced in this story that will reflect on the past 2 Star Wars movies based within the sequel trilogy, such as The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. This is Mike Zero. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that a majority of Star Wars fans are really looking forward to seeing exactly what JJ is going to do with the legacy characters. We're talking about Chewbacca, Leia, Luke Skywalker, Lando Calrissian, and even Han Solo. Exactly how JJ is going to utilize these characters in Episode 9, but even more importantly, George Lucas and his involvement in Episode 9. Now, these past couple of weeks or so, we've been learning a whole lot more about this film, and when it all comes down to one of the set leaks, this is where things begin to get very exciting for this movie. Now, specifically, it's described that one of the scenes that were shot during the month of January involved a scene where Mark Hamill was being advised and directed by George Lucas for a flashback scene that's said to include the unused footage of Carrie Fisher as Leia from the past 2 films. It's described that George Lucas was heavily involved with many of the flashbacks involving Luke Skywalker as well as other characters in order to give an accurate portrayal of those characters during an unexplored timeline of the Star Wars franchise. It said that J.J. Abrams needed George Lucas to direct these scenes, as George had a vision of this unknown era of Star Wars that fans have never seen before on the big screen. Another sequence that George was involved in was a flashback involving Luke Skywalker exiting a crashed X-Wing in the water that implies it was a flashback of when Luke first arrives on the world of Ahch-To. So I want to go over a couple of parts about this, and before I do, first things first, happy birthday George Lucas. In case you guys did not know, today is George Lucas's birthday, so go ahead and write that below in the comments, give him a great happy birthday. So moving past all of this, alright? The one piece that I do want to go over is how a lot of the flashback scenes involving Luke and Leia and a whole lot more actually had George Lucas involved, directing and advising these scenes that were written, of course, by J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio. Now, the fact that they are exploring this unexplored era, or timeline, if you will, of the Star Wars franchise in great detail in this movie, I think is a really good move, because a lot of fans have always been wondering, what that point in time was really like. There's a big 30-year gap in between the events of the originals and the sequels, and sure, they will be exploring this in Star Wars The Mandalorian and other TV series to come in the future, but surrounding the characters of Luke, Leia, Han, Lando, a lot of people want to know more about their lives in between the events of those 2 big trilogies, and I think that this is George Lucas and basically his amazing way of really introducing that whole entire concept in Episode 9. So like I say, this whole entire idea, yes, was written by J.J. Abrams, however, George Lucas actually directed and advised numerous scenes that include flashbacks of Luke and Leia. Now, one of which involved a sequence in which Mark Hamill was being advised and directed by George Lucas on exactly how to act with the unused footage of Carrie Fisher as Leia from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi for a scene between both Luke and Leia for a moment in between the events of the originals and the sequels. The other of which actually included Mark Hamill in a crashed X-Wing in the water on set over at Pinewood in a very large pool. Now, you guys may recall a couple of things that we went over before, I would say 6 months ago, give or take. It was well before, the new year came by. We went over how there was a sequence that was filmed that involved Luke Skywalker crashing on the world of Ahch-To. And this most certainly falls directly in line with this, and I'm very happy to know that George Lucas is actually going to be involved with the majority of the flashback sequences involving Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Leia, you name it. I think that, the fact that Disney and Lucasfilm have him on board, and now that the new Star Wars trilogy is going to shift away from Rian Johnson and is going to be primarily focused on David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, it seems like that Disney and Lucasfilm are really trying to go in a correct direction here, and are trying to course correct the Star Wars franchise, and to really rethink their strategy. So having George Lucas on board, like I say guys, it's very hard to tell if this was a genuine move or an act of desperation. Now, of course, a lot of people would quickly say and quickly assume that this is yet indeed an act of desperation, which honestly, I could absolutely see that because, I'm sure that they know about the backlash that The Last Jedi received. I'm sure that they know that the Solo: A Star Wars Story box office results actually suffered from that. And with that being all done and said, guys, I will say this, right here, right now, that George Lucas, say what you will about the prequels, but there was something magical about Revenge of the Sith. There was something magical about the lightsaber duels and the music that was actually done by John Williams in those movies that I just feel don't really add up to the sequel trilogy, and I think the fact that George is back now and he's involved with numerous scenes in Episode 9, this really does speak volumes by Disney and Lucasfilm that they are trying to satisfy the fans. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.